I used a new mod to compare the top speeds of different pals and measure how long it takes them to reach that speed. But speed on paper doesn't tell us how fast they'll actually be in the real world, right? So I decided to put them to the ultimate test. I built a racetrack, and we're going to see which pals can handle it best. Grab a cup of depresso and sit back, because you're about to learn, once and for all, which pal is the fastest with and without the best passives and partner skills, whether stamina makes a difference, and if pal souls, level, condensation level, trust, or awakening crystals improve the speed in any way. So I started my test by first turning off building decay in the settings. I then built a testing ground from my base island to Isle of Decayed Treasures to level out the playing field for flying, ground and water-based pals. It came out at 430 tiles, or, if my calculation is correct, 1.7 kilometers. I think it's a pretty realistic distance that you may want to be able to cover in one burst without stopping. Then, I wanted to check whether level of trust makes a difference, so I found two Adrelon that I had bred that were otherwise identical, fed one of them kinship hearts and had them run the whole length. Trust level made no difference, and neither did regular level. If you're wondering, Speed HUD mod, the mod I mentioned in the beginning, wasn't yet available. So I checked next if spending pal souls did anything, and of course it didn't. Condensation made no difference for Adrelon's base speed either, but it did improve its passive skill. According to the description, it gives it 2% boost per each fire and dragon pal in the party at no condensation, and 6% per pal at max condensation. I don't think it's very feasible to carry around 5 fire and dragon pals all the time, but I tested it still to see the impact it has. This is the point at which I employed Speed HUD. I will leave links to the Steam Workshop and Nexus mods in the description if you want to try it out too. So fully condensed Adrelon Ignis with 4 other fire pals in the party finished at 27 seconds, while the non-condensed one with 4 other pals in the party finished at 28.5 seconds, which, in the grand scheme of things, isn't a lot. Fully condensed Adrelon Ignis utilizing its partner skill to the max is only 1.5 seconds faster than the most bare-bones Adrelon with the same passive skills. In terms of top speed, the difference is just 16 km per hour. However, this top speed makes a real difference in the real world when you are flying, not gliding along the ground. Because flying mounts, when traveling over ground, spend less stamina than when flying. So let's test that. And now you can see that the difference is stark, because the non-condensed Ignis does not have enough stamina to finish the track, and finishes in 29.4 seconds, a whole second slower than when it was traveling on ground, and nearly 4 seconds slower than the fully condensed Adrelon, which finished at 25.7 seconds. Now, you might be wondering, how come flying Adrelon is faster than the one traveling on the ground? It makes no sense, because it flaps its wings in both those situations. Well, you weren't expecting physics in Palworld now, were you? On the ground, the speed of the flying mounts is hindered by aerodynamic drag, but when flying higher, the air becomes thinner.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Nah, I just made a mistake. It's 26.7 for all 3 stats, because this Adrelon didn't run out of stamina even once on any of these tests. Now, what would happen if I used an awakened crystal from the world tree on my Adrelons? Would that improve the speed? No, it would not. My non-condensed awakened Ignis reached the same top speed as the non-awakened one. Now, the last piece of the puzzle is to test whether size makes a difference. Unfortunately, I did not have an alpha Adrelon to test this with, so there was only one way forward. Creative Menu mod. I have to say it's an amazing mod for testing, but I don't recommend installing it, lest you lose interest in playing the game. For a list of mods that I've checked and do recommend, check out this video. So, I created an alpha Adrelon Ignis.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Guess what? Despite alphas reportedly having 100 more speed units, it doesn't seem like this applies universally to every mount, as every single alpha Adrelon came at the same time or within the margin of error. I tested it with the non-perfect Frostallions that I had and discovered that the Alpha Frostallion, on the other hand, covered the distance 4 seconds faster. Okay, so now that we know that size does affect speed too, here is the full list of things that affect mount speed. Passive abilities. The best to look for are Dimensional Leap, which you can only get after you travel to the World Tree and either find a bell or an egg with it, or recycle enough relics. The bells that have them are so rare that I advise you just look for ominous eggs, and if you don't mind using mods to help you find them, check out my mod video that I mentioned earlier. Still, my preferred method is just recycling relics, because that's a relatively passive approach, and implants that you get from them can be installed even on pals that can be bred with others, and therefore don't have the ability to receive that passive through breeding. Other passives to look for are Swift, Runner, and Legend. Some pals that can be bred with anyone but their own species will not be able to receive the Legend passive, as it's also not available as an implant, therefore Nimble is the next best thing. In case of water pals, King of the Waves and Ace Swimmer increase speed even more than Legend and are a good replacement for Legend and Runner. Water pals as a whole, except for Chillet, don't have stamina when they are in water, so you don't have to worry about stamina skills if that's what you'll use them for. For ground mounts, Sky Marcher and Light Footed are useful for extra jumps, but obviously don't add any speed, so I don't take those into account. By the way, this infographic is from my video on breeding perfect pals. Check it out if you want to breed all around perfect pals with perfect IVs. When it comes to partner skills, of course, you cannot pick and choose. They're unique to each pal species, and we will see during this test whether some species' skills make them much faster than you'd expect. Condensation improves these skills, but speed will only be improved if the passive skill explicitly mentions speed improvement. That's how you know if your travel mount can benefit from condensation or not. With size, we've determined that while some pals certainly benefit from increased size, not all do, so I will make sure to test which pals' speeds are affected by their size, and for those that aren't affected, I will not add an alpha entry, so you know if it's worth farming alphas or not. When it comes to stamina, it stands to mention that I have endurance boosted to max, but if you have not yet found any Cativa effigies, your results will be slightly worse. To help you out, I will add stamina to each pal in my final list. You may wish to choose slightly slower pals with more stamina to have better end result. I won't bore you with hundreds of timers for hundreds of pals that I spent days testing, so without further ado, the results. I posted this on Reddit so everyone can easily see and reference my findings. In my testing, I compared the fastest pals according to PAL database, regardless if they are water, ground, or flying. I used Leap, Legend, Runner, and Swift, skillset A, except for those pals that can't have Legend, like raid bosses and pals that only breed with themselves. For Heartalis and the like, I used Dimensional Leap, Swift Runner, and Nimble, skillset C. For most pals that have variants like Adrelon and Adrelon Ignis, the speed is the same. However, for some that can be made by breeding with other species, like Phalaris and Phalaris Aqua, there is a speed difference between them, since Aqua can also have Legend as opposed to just Nimble. These are reflected in the table, of course. Similarly, if size makes any difference to speed for a particular species, alphas are also included, otherwise they're not. Same with partner skills. If I found there to be a speed difference between pals when they're utilizing their partner skill, I made sure to test them with and without the skill, and with and without condensation. For water pals then, I use skillset B, which equals King of the Waves, Ace Swimmer, Swift, and for some, like Pentalus, I also include skillset D, which is just Legend, for comparison purposes. Remember that water pals don't have stamina when moving on water, but they do when moving on ground, so I compared that as well. In the table, I included top speed that the pal can reach and the time it takes to get there. On my racetrack, I compared pal speeds when they're flying, on ground, or in water. For pals where it didn't make sense to put them in the water, for example Xenolord, I was just flying on top of it. For others, like Celine, she cannot dive into water and moves on top of it as if it's ground, therefore her speed matches the ground speed. When a pal, despite flying, was not able to cover the whole distance flying atop of water, like Shadowbeak, and ran out of stamina and drowned, I marked it with just an M dash. I sorted everything by time it took to cover the track by ground, and unfortunately you can't sort markdown tables, so I will also leave a Google Sheets link in the description. So what can we conclude from this? For me, the biggest takeaway is that there isn't many fast versatile pals in the game at all. Before you get to the end game, your best bet is to get a Frostallion, or if you don't mind spending time breeding good passives, again, I explain how in my video on breeding, Adrelon should be your priority number 1. Then, you won't really need a jet dragon, considering making a good one will take you longer for very tiny gains, and riding the most basic one that only has legend means giving up 17 positions on the list. Panthalos, as expected, did not turn out to be that good at all. Yes, it is gigantic, and yes, it does not have a stamina bar, but being gigantic is also its downfall. It takes forever for it to accelerate, and I don't see it as viable for traveling at all. It's hard to dismount from it without taking fall damage, and while you're descending from it, it will already start a war with Yugoslavia. The biggest disappointment is that none of the ground or water mounts can outcompete the flyers even in their own elements, making them subpar options almost always when it comes to pure traveling speed. Neptilius does get somewhat close to beating Jet Dragon when using its Sentinel of the Sea that you have to activate every few seconds, but you can't use it outside of water and it launches you into air, making you unable to navigate, so also a subpar option. Gangler cannot even jump well, so it's even harder to use outside water. Yormuntide disappointed me in both water and ground. Despite its huge stamina, its speed just isn't good enough. Ophidia is surprisingly decent. Her slickness allows her to gracefully glide from ground to water with no stutter or anything, and is a joy to use. Chillet is a terrible water mount because unlike other swimmers, it uses stamina to swim. Once it is depleted, it starts drowning. I also noticed that flying pals that take to the sky from water will have slower max speed than those starting from the ground, so that's a curious thing. So I wonder if that's just some bug with the mod, or if it's like a real thing in the Palworld. Many pals like Celine and Xenogard are hard to use because they cover the entire screen, so if you're going to use them, I advise having some field of view mod. Alpha pals rarely improve the speed, and thanks to my testing you can now know for sure which ones are worth farming. Though I don't know if it's truly worth it considering the best alpha pal, Frostallion, ran the distance only 3 seconds faster than the regular one, but was slower to gain speed and had less maneuverability. If there's no alpha in my list, don't use it as a mount, as you'll only sacrifice nimbleness for some HP that such a pal doesn't really need. That's all I have for you this time. Make sure to check out my other videos, how to breed and find every pal in the game, here, how to breed the perfect pals with perfect IVs and passives, here, and my curated list of essential mods, here. And if you're looking to rent a dedicated server, use the link in the description to lock in a 10% discount on G Portal. See ya!